For more on this, we can speak now with John Bolton. He served as U.S. National Security Advisor during the first Trump administration. He also served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations during the administration of George W. Bush. Thanks for joining us on the day. Ambassador Bolton, we're seeing commercial vessels being hit in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is still firing missiles and drones at its neighbors. Have the U.S. and Israel underestimated the Iranian regime's capabilities to fight back?
No, I don't think so. I think, in fact, Iran has made a severe mistake in attacking the Gulf Arab states. I think that has driven them closer to the United States and Israel, made them more important participants, obviously, for their own defense, but also in assisting in the military operation. And I think while the closing of the Strait of Hormuz obviously has the potential for enormous economic impact around the world, it helps show people, I think, just how vicious this regime is, how desperate it is to hang on to power. And if you don't like the regime now, imagine what it would look like with nuclear weapons.
Now, we've been hearing from the Trump administration and from the Israeli side how well their military campaign has been going. What's your assessment?
Well, I think so far it's gone fine. It's the question, though, is whether it will sufficiently destabilize the regime that the opposition inside Iran can take advantage of it and help it to topple.
How much confidence do you have, Ambassador Bolton, in the people who are running this war in Washington, like Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary, or Secretary of War, as he says?
I have confidence in the military, and I think the military side of this is going well. I think the political side is not going so well. I don't think the president made the case to the American people why regime change is a logical, indeed compelling policy to pursue. He didn't prepare Congress for it. He didn't prepare the allies for it. And perhaps most important of all, I don't think that there's evidence he's really working effectively with the opposition. So it's the political side of the equation, I think, where the problems lie. I think a demonstration of that has just happened within the past few days, where you see reporting that the White House was surprised that the price of oil had gone up. All I can say is I'm surprised that they're surprised if they didn't realize that a war in the region of the world that produces 20% of its oil wouldn't have an effect on prices. And I think that explains why the president has rushed to tell everybody it's almost over. He's trying to bring oil prices down and stock prices up.
Would you say that the president is looking for an off-ramp at this point?
He's always looking for an off-ramp. And in fact, I think that is a particular problem here. And I say this, I come from the position, I want regime change to succeed. I think this is a just war and indeed an important and necessary war. And I'm very much afraid that Trump will have caused a lot of destruction in Iran, but will leave the battle before the regime is changed. And that will leave essentially the same ideology in charge, this time wounded and even more desperate to get revenge. So if he wasn't willing to pursue regime change to its end, Trump never should have started this war.
You have been calling for regime change in Iran for decades. Do you think that the current operation by the U.S. and Israel is going to achieve that?
Well, the current operation is aiming to end the nuclear and ballistic missile program and do severe damage to the instruments of state power that threaten us, threaten Israel, threaten the Gulf Arabs, and threaten their own people, the Revolutionary Guard, the Quds Force, the besieging militia. The effect of that operation, which I do think is achieving its objectives, should be to fracture the regime at the top, to split the leaders, at least some of whom will begin to worry that their ship's about to go down, and they don't want to go down with it. That's why the opposition is critical. It's not just for them to go out and demonstrate in the streets. It's because of their knowledge of the weak spots in the government, people who might be encouraged to defect to the opposition, especially in the regular army, not the Revolutionary Guard, but the conventional forces, and help facilitate the collapse of the regime internally.
Do you think the regime in Iran can be changed without putting U.S. troops on the ground?
Yes, I do. I think the regime is extraordinarily unpopular. It's at its weakest point since it came to power in 1979. I think we saw that back in December and January with demonstrations in all 31 provinces, and so strong that the regime responded, as you would expect this kind of regime to respond, by killing over 30,000 of its own citizens. So these are the circumstances in which you have to overcome the near monopoly on force that the government has. And one way to do that would be to break elements of the regular army away from the regime, have them come over to the side of the people. And after all, they're filled in their rank and file with people whose friends and relatives are out there in the streets demonstrating. The Revolutionary Guard, in rough numbers, has about 200,000 people. The regular military, counting reserves, has about 800,000 people.
If this military campaign ends with the current regime still intact, what do you think will happen in Iran?
Well, I think there'll be a further very brutal repression of opponents of the regime, which I think is close to 80% of the population, if not more. The economy is in the tank. The young people, who are 2/3 of the population under 30, know they could have a different kind of life. They see it across the Gulf and on the internet when the government turns it on. The women of Iran demonstrated what they think of the regime in the demonstrations 3 years ago after the murder of Mahsa Amini, the young Kurdish woman, and ethnic groups in Iran that comprise, depending on whose numbers you look at, comprise between 40 and 50% of the total population, are also unhappy. So this is evidence of why the potential for overthrow of the regime is enormous, and why the destruction that these attacks are causing should be telling people the regime can't defend itself. And if it can't defend itself, its days are numbered.
Iran borders many countries, and of course, the Gulf countries are just across that water there. How much potential does this war have to further destabilize the region? And I'm thinking particularly about Iraq or the Kurdish populations.
Well, let's take the Gulf Arabs first. I think they feel betrayed by Iran. They went out of their way, especially countries like Qatar, to try and make nice with the Ayatollahs, and this is what they get in return. So I think they, as I said before, they have driven the Gulf Arabs even closer to the U.S. than before. In Iraq, it's Iran that's one of the principal causes of instability, arming the Shia militia that have been reported, by the way, have come from Iraq into Iran back in December and January to open fire on the Iranians in the demonstrations. The Kurds, I think, are a special case. They've wanted their own nation for a long time, and when we were drawing the lines of boundaries in the Middle East at the Versailles Peace Conference in 1918, the Kurds lost out. I personally favor an independent Kurdish state. I'm not saying I want to split Iran or anything like that. I think it's way too soon to make that kind of judgment. But the Kurds are actors on. They have agency themselves. They're going to do what they want to do.
If you were still security advisor to the U.S. administration today, what would you tell Donald Trump?
I'd say you've got to stick to it. Persistence and patience, not two of his strongest virtues, are required here. And I would have said this at the beginning. I would not have started this war if the objective were not regime change, and if we didn't have the resolve to last until it succeeds.
Do you think there is any role for diplomacy in this situation? And if so, who might be in a position to serve as mediator?
There's no point in diplomacy with this regime. They have lied and cheated on nuclear matters and ballistic missile matters for 25 years. Their ideology doesn't permit them to engage in the normal give and take of negotiation. I think they've played the West for fools for a long time. I don't think the problem really ultimately is the nuclear weapons or the terrorism. It's the regime itself. That's why it has to go. The only chance for long-term peace and stability in the Middle East is that this regime goes.
Looking at where things stand now and the lack of appetite in the U.S. for another forever war, to have more U.S. lives, boots on the ground, as in Iraq or Afghanistan, how do you see this conflict playing out?
Well, I think as we're speaking, Trump could declare total victory and pull everybody out. He's perfectly capable of it, and that's a problem. I wish we had a different president who was doing this, and in fact, I wish we had a president who had had the good sense to prepare the American people by making the case for regime change by an address from the Oval Office to the nation as a whole, not in a speech from Mar-a-Lago at 2:30 in the morning. I think American politicians and European politicians, while we're on the subject, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, have generally failed to understand that the world is still a dangerous place, that we didn't reach the end of history when we won the Cold War, and that if we had been better prepared, some of these other challenges we faced since then might have been less harmful. But we're still feeling the effect of the post-history that many people entered into in 1991 and 92.
Mr. Bolton, thank you very much. That was John Bolton, former U.S. National Security Advisor during the first Trump administration.